everybody, and welcome back to Movie Files. Elliott here with my Netflix TV review for the first half of Stranger Things Season 3. This review is going to be spoiler-filled, so I'm going to break down episodes, or I should say chapters 1 through 4, and then I'm going to finish the season and then give you guys my review for chapters 5 through 8. So before I get into what I liked about the first half so far, the dislikes, things of that nature, I want to welcome all those that are new to Movie Files. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. And also, with this being such a huge phenomenon, I'm a big fan of Stranger Things. I hope you are as well. Leave your comments below what you thought about the first 4 chapters so far and your excitement level of the rest of the chapters if you're up to me as far as like you're in the first half and you're gonna finish the second half. Let me know in the comments. With that being said, let's get into this spoiler-filled review for the first half of Stranger Things Season 3. Alright, so jumping into chapter 1, which was titled Suzie, Do You Copy? I watch enough TV to kind of know what to expect from a first episode, from a season premiere. You get a lot of what the cast has been up to, what the crew's been up to, have they moved forward? Are there still effects from the previous season? That's what we couldn't get with this episode here. Again, Suzie, Do You Copy? It opens, it has like a cold opening, and it takes place, I believe, in Russia, 1984. So it was, what is that? 4 or 5 months prior to season 2, and showing you what happened and how the gate might have opened due to the Russian spies, as Dustin and Steve have called them so far. So we see that the Russians have found the wall in Russia and they're trying to open the wall. And then we see this particular general and his kind of henchmen kill this one scientist and giving them a year to find out how to open this gate. We fast forward a year later, we see what our favorite kids are up to. We see Mike and Elle are officially a thing now. They're making out, and Hopper's not a fan of that. We see that there's a mall now in Hawkins, which all the kids love and all the adults. Is very packed, but we see the effects of the mall is causing small businesses like Joy's job to be a lack of business. Things are shutting down because of this mall now. We see the kids walking to the Day of the Dead theater, which we see everyone. Again, this is kind of like what everyone's been up to. We see that Steve's working at the mall. Again, Mike and Elle are a thing. We haven't seen Dustin yet, but we'll get to him a little bit later. We see that Max and Lucas are still a thing, and then catching up with everybody. So then we see there's a huge power outage during the movie. We kind of see the beginnings of this new creature that we're going to get in this season 3. We see that Will, once the power outage happens or before it happens, Will has kind of a I'll call it, because I just saw Spider-Man, a little tingle going on because he feels the presence of this of the mind flare. So we see that, and again, at this point, it's just like, Will, if something's going on, tell them what's happening, which we'll get to that a little bit later, but we see that happens to Will. We see Nancy and Jonathan, they work at the post office, or not the post office, but they work at the newspaper outlet kind of in Hawkins. And then we finally get Dustin back. We see he's been on summer vacation, and we see this scene in the trailer where they scare him, and he sprays the spray in Luke's eye. But we see that now Dustin has created this new cerebral, as he calls it, to communicate between the North and South Pole, and he actually has this new girlfriend, hence the title called Suzie, Do You Hear Me? It'll be interesting. Again, I'm 4 episodes in, halfway through the season, if we actually meet Suzie, but we see that Dustin wants to show his friends how this new cerebral works. We see that Nancy is not a big fan of her co-workers at the job, and this has been a storyline so far in the season. Steve kind of feels kind of misplaced. A lot of his friends have now went to college or in college now, and I believe he said that he tried to go to college and didn't pass the test, and his dad said he has to get a job to kind of take responsibility, things of that nature. Kind of moving from there, we see Hopper trying to do his little thing with Joyce. Obviously, Joyce is still affected by the loss of her boyfriend of season 2, which was Bob, which was played beautifully by Sean Astin, who I'm a big fan of. But we see that she's still kind of in that relationship, or still kind of mourning his death. But Hopper kind of finds a way and trying to get into a relationship with her, and using the excuse of, how do I have Elle and Mike kind of separate, and they have a little funny moment there. And this is really what episode 1 is about. Again, not only just catching up to our favorite characters, but also just kind of creating a new story threads and new storylines. And obviously, like I said, Hopper's not a fan of the Mike and Elle situation that we got going on. Kind of finishing up, we see Dustin, Max, Lucas all going to the hill to create the cerebral. Will's with them as well. He kind of has another incident because he sees a bunch of the rats, which again, the rats kind of play into Nancy and Jonathan's kind of storyline so far. Dustin doesn't get a hold of Suzie, but instead he gets a transmission, or intercepts a message from the Russians, which kind of leads towards the end of the episode. But the big stinger is we see Billy Billy is, interacting with Mrs. Mike's mom and Nancy's mom, and they're going to meet her at a private pool, as he called it. And then we see what happens with Billy, which he was kind of the villain per se in season 2, and then the season 1 premiere ends with Billy going to, or season 3 premiere ends with Billy going to the kind of warehouse where the creature has been kind of created with these rats, and then Billy is now a new host for this creature. So the episode 1, again, I really enjoyed it. It kind of, again, did everything that I expected to do, which is follow us up with what's been going on this last year since 2017 in the real world, and now we fast forward to this where they're at in the storyline in 1984 before the 4th of July. So again, a really fun episode, really lighthearted. Didn't have too much darkness towards the end. It was definitely some darkness, but again, I really enjoyed the first episode. But jumping into this episode 2, chapter 2, which was titled Mall Rats, we see that Billy is now the new host of the creature, and we see that, and kind of touching on some other storylines, we see that Hopper has now convinced Mike to lie to Elle, which kind of creates a rift from them, and this is kind of the episode, kind of what we get. This is much more of a lighter tone episode. We have a bunch of relationships going on and things ending, things beginning. We see, Elle and Max kind of being a friend, having a friendship now, and going to the mall and getting some fun moments there with the music and the ice cream and all that different stuff. We get more of the Nancy and Jonathan storyline, which at this point, chapter 2, again, I enjoy the performances by the actors and actresses that play Nancy and Jonathan, but a lot of times their beginnings of their storylines are kind of lackluster compared to the other storylines that I would be more interested in. But we see kind of where they're going with this Nancy and Jonathan thing. They're a couple, but Nancy wants to kind of prove herself and wants to become a writer, and Jonathan is kind of tagging along. They go to this lady's house who's reporting an incident. She saw a bunch of rats eating her fertilizer, and she caught one of the rats, and they're kind of playing with that storyline. We go back to the mall where Dustin, and now 2 of my favorite pairs from season 2 was Dustin and Steve, and we kind of see them reunite, and this is when we're kind of introduced to Steve's co-worker Robin, who I am absolutely in love with so far, and Dustin and Steve are kind of talking about what Dustin kind of found and trying to, he's trying to help him out in the sense of finding out who these Russian spies are, what this message meant, and that was fun. That's probably my favorite 2 episodes, 2 chapters in so far. It's probably my favorite storyline thus far. We meet the mayor in this episode, and we see that there's definitely some hate going on with the mayor. The town does not like what he's been doing. He's been raising taxes. He opened up this new mall, so there's a lot of hate on the mayor right now. Joyce visits the kid's teacher to kind of figure out what's going on with the magnet situation, which I thought was really interesting. And then again, Joyce has always got a hint. She's just like, she always just wants, I can't blame her, right? What happened to her son these last 2 seasons, she definitely wants to kind of know what's going on. Anything strange going on, she wants to know about it. We see the effects of Billy is now growing within him. Again, this we get a lot of lightheartedness within this episode with Max and Elle shopping. Elle dumps Mike. We get Joyce gets an idea, a thing about the magnets, and then again, I love the storyline with Dustin and Steve about figuring out this message, and then Steve kind of puts the pieces together and hears the music and knows that these Russians are meeting in the mall. I really enjoyed that. That story thread. We get a little hint of the Russian in the episode, chapter 1. We see him meeting with the mayor. So there's a lot of this cool stuff going on in this particular episode. And then the way it kind of ends is we see Billy taking the Heather character, the Lifeguard, and potentially spreading this disease. As we know, as of later episodes, that's kind of what they're doing, is building an army. So on to chapter 3, which is titled The Case of the Missing Lifeguard. My favorite episode thus far, 3 episodes or 3 chapters in. We get more of the Luke and Mike and Max and Elle relationship stuff kind of playing out. We see Elle showing off her powers, spying on people, which I thought was really cool. She spies on the kids and see what they're doing, but more in particular, she spies on Billy and sees that something's going on. Billy sees her and with her using her powers, which I thought was really kind of unique. And the interesting about the Billy being kind of the protagonist, the antagonist in this season so far, is it'll be interesting to see how this played out, because he's not a redeemable character, right? Like, if this was Steve who was being possessed and the host now, it would be kind of like, oh man, we want Steve to be helped, but Billy's not the most likable character. Outside of Max, there's really not too many other characters that enjoy Billy outside of Mike's and Nancy's mom, Mrs. Wheeler or Weiler. So it'll be really interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out in regards to, do we feel for Billy? Do we want him back? When he gets hurt, do we feel affected by that? But anyway, we see that Billy now is spreading the I guess you want to call it, he's possessing these other people. Nancy is continuing to try to get the story off the ground. We see Steve and them again continue to search for these Russian spies. Phil Will again gets the feeling about something is going on, but more particularly, he's feeling detached from his friends because again, we have Mike and Lucas worried about Max and Elle. We have Dustin doing whatever he's doing, and Will's really feeling left out at this point. This is when Will kind of goes back to his little hiding spot in his backyard and tears his childhood apart at that point. Again, you got to feel for Will because these last 2 seasons, he's been possessed, he's lost his mind, he's almost died. So, I mean, it is kind of sad for him because you would think his friends would be really paying attention to him after the multiple seasons that we got so far, with him being the one that's almost died, season 1 and season 2. This is probably my favorite episode so far because again, we get more of this character that I'm super in love with. I love the energy she brings on the screen, and it's the Robin character. She figures out the code. Again, she's such a fun character. We find out that Joyce is potentially moving away from Hawkins, which kind of hints towards her and Hopper getting together, teaming up, and trying to figure out what's going on with these magnet dropping. We see that Mrs. Driscoll, creature inside the basement, is now inside of her. Max and Elle goes to Heather's house because, again, Max and Elle have discovered that her brother Billy is up to no good, and they want to figure out what's going on with the lifeguard. They go to her house, and we see that Heather's perfectly fine, but the way the scene plays out, we know that she's not fine, and we see that she actually now has kidnapped her parents and is now spreading the disease to them. Again, a really good episode. Things are really kind of picking up. Again, I thought that the first 2 episodes, again, really enjoyed the first episode. The second episode was solid, but now chapter 3 really kind of picks up the pieces and really get the ball rolling. Jumps into chapter 4, the Sauna test, where we see the parents of Heather now has become a part of the army. We see that now the crew, our favorite crew of kids, have now put the pieces together, and Mike calls out a cold red. He calls Dustin, he calls Elle, he calls Max, and they meet into the basement explaining exactly what they kind of found. We finally got people talking to each other, and they figure out that the mind flare, Will kind of explains how he thinks the mind flare is stayed on in Hawkins, and I like that finally they have talked about it. We're not wasting 4 or 5 episodes with people all over the place. We still kind of got that. Again, we have Jonathan and Nancy doing their thing. We have Hopper and Joyce doing their thing, and Dustin and Steve and Robin, but majority of the cast are now on the same page, and I'm hoping by episode 5, which I haven't got there yet, that they're all working together now. But anyway, we see that the Mind Flayer is back. He has a new host, and now they have to figure out how to figure out if Billy is the new host. And I love how they come up with that idea. And again, Elle and Mike trying to figure out their situation. But it was a really cool scene, and we see kind of on that theme, that was my favorite part of the episode, where we see them trying to get the host out of Billy and see if he is the host. And I love that they use the sauna and the whole scene with the door breaking down and Elle versus Billy versus Mike. It was just so much fun. It kind of reminded me of It for a minute, especially with Finn Wolfhard in that scene when he hits Billy with he tells him to go to hell. It reminded me of him and Pennywise, and that was a really cool scene. But it was just a really powerful scene. Again, you see Max seeing that her brother is the new host. She really doesn't want that, even though they don't really mesh well together. It's her brother, so she has, obviously she doesn't want him to die, and obviously doesn't want him to be possessed by this mind flare. Moving on to some other storylines we get in this episode. Hopper and Joyce have now figured out that the mayor knows about the Russians, and he beats him up and gets information from him and finds out that the Starport, which owns the mall, has bought most of the properties and real estate in Hawkins, and they're trying to really grow whatever they're doing. Again, we figure out in this episode that Dustin, Steve, and Robin use Erica, which was a phenomenal scene. Use her to get into the duct work, or the ducts of the mall, and figure out what's going on in those containers. They find a secret elevator. Really great scene. We see at the same time with everything going on with Billy and Elle and Mike and crew, we have Mrs. Driscoll in the hospital, who is now the creatures kind of coming out of her, and obviously Nancy and them, they get fired from that. So again, this is probably by far my favorite episode thus far in the season. We see that Billy has now created somewhat of a smaller army to just take over Hawkins and really kind of spread this disease. I don't know if this is the plans of the Russians to do that. Is it a plan to mobilize it? I don't know what's going on so far, but again, kind of summarizing the first half of the season 3 of Stranger Things. Again, I really enjoyed what we got so far. I'm excited to see how everything ties together. Are we going to lose some characters? Is Billy going to be ultimately sacrificed to get this new host out of his system? Are they hinting towards Hopper maybe being someone that's going to be gone by the end of the season? Again, I think this is setting itself up to be a great season. I really have enjoyed it so far. Again, I would say if I were to rank these 4 episodes in the first half, I would have to say 4, 3, 1, and 2 are kind of the order of my entertainment so far. But so far has been really good. But I would love to know what you all have thought of the first half of season 3 of Stranger Things. Let me know in the comments. As always, subscribe to our channel. Keep an eye out for some content that we have coming up pretty soon, which is the second half of Stranger Things season 3. But also on our channel right now, you can see our reviews for Spider-Man Far From Home, non-spoiler and spoiler-filled review, and we also have our Midsummer non-spoiler review. So check that out on our channel. Subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell to stay up to date with our content. Follow us on all of our social media accounts. Again, keep an eye out for my second half, part 2 of season 3 of Stranger Things. Keep an eye out for that video. I'm going to probably have it up sometime this weekend. But thank you all for watching this review, and we'll see you on the next one.